During the Great Depression, Americans relied on backyard gardens packed with nutrient-dense vegetables that delivered maximum nutrition from minimal space. Today, these forgotten varieties could be the answer to rising food costs and declining nutritional content in modern produce. Let's explore 15 Depression-era vegetables that deserve a comeback in your garden today. Kale. Long before kale became a trendy superfood, it was a Depression-era staple that kept families nourished through the toughest times. This leafy powerhouse is packed with more nutrition per square inch than almost any other garden vegetable. Kale thrives in cool weather and was traditionally planted in early spring and again in late summer for a fall harvest. What made kale especially valuable during the 1930s was its incredible cold hardiness. Families could often harvest it well into winter, even after light frosts, which actually improved its flavor. Nutritionally, kale delivers more calcium per calorie than milk, more vitamin C than an orange, and is loaded with vitamins A, K, and a range of B vitamins. Back then, gardeners grew varieties like dwarf blue-curled Scotch and lacinato, also called dinosaur kale, which are still available today. Growing kale is straightforward. Plant seeds 1/4 inch deep and 3 inches apart, then thin to 12 inches as they grow. The beauty of kale is you can harvest the outer leaves continuously while the plant keeps producing new growth from the center. During the Depression, families would often cover their kale with straw after the first frost, extending the harvest even further into winter. Rutabaga. Rutabagas, sometimes called Swedes or Swedish turnips, were prized for their incredible storage capabilities and dense nutritional profile. These large, yellow-fleshed root vegetables were a staple in 1930s gardens because they could be planted in midsummer and harvested after the first frost, which improved their flavor. A single rutabaga plant could produce a substantial root weighing 3 to 5 pounds, providing multiple meals for a hungry family. Nutritionally, rutabagas are packed with vitamin C, something especially important during winter months when fresh fruits were unavailable. They also contain significant amounts of potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Depression-era cooks would boil and mash rutabagas like potatoes, add them to soups and stews, or slice and roast them. What many people don't realize is that rutabaga greens are also edible and nutritious. During the Depression, nothing went to waste. The young, tender greens would be cooked like turnip greens, adding another dimension to this versatile vegetable. Rutabagas were often stored in root cellars, buried in slightly damp sand, where they would keep for months, providing vital nutrition throughout winter. Dandelion greens. Would you believe that one of the most nutritious vegetables from the 1930s is something most people today try to eliminate from their lawns? That's right. Dandelions were actively cultivated during the Depression, not fought against with herbicides. Dandelion greens were valued as a free source of nutrition that would appear in early spring when other fresh vegetables were scarce. These humble greens pack a remarkable nutritional punch. They contain more vitamin A than carrots, more vitamin C than tomatoes, and are loaded with calcium, iron, and potassium. During the 1930s, people would gather dandelion greens for spring tonics to cleanse the system after winter. They'd add them to salads, sauté them with a bit of bacon fat, or cook them like spinach. Nothing was wasted. Even the flowers were used to make dandelion wine. What's fascinating is that dandelions were actually brought to America intentionally by European settlers who valued them for food and medicine. The entire plant is edible: roots, leaves, and flowers. The roots were often dried, roasted, and ground as a coffee substitute during the Depression, when real coffee was too expensive. They were also used medicinally as a diuretic and liver tonic. Pole beans. During the Depression, garden space was precious, and no vegetable made better use of vertical space than pole beans. These climbing legumes were a cornerstone of 1930s gardens, providing essential protein when meat was often unaffordable. Unlike bush beans that grow low to the ground, pole beans climb 6 to 10 feet high on trellises, poles, or even corn stalks in traditional Three Sisters plantings. This vertical growth meant families could produce more food in limited space. Nutritionally, pole beans are rich in plant protein, fiber, folate, and minerals like iron and potassium. Varieties like Kentucky Wonder and Blue Lake were Depression-era favorites that are still available today. What made pole beans especially valuable was their extended harvest period, providing families with a steady supply of fresh vegetables throughout the summer. Depression-era gardeners knew that pole beans would produce for weeks longer than bush beans if picked regularly. They would often save seeds from their best plants, selecting for productivity, flavor, and disease resistance. These saved seeds became family heirlooms, passed down through generations. Some families would plant different varieties, some for fresh eating, others specifically for drying, ensuring they had beans in various forms year-round. Beets. Beets were a Depression-era garden superstar because they provided two vegetables in one, nutritious roots and vitamin-rich greens. This dual-purpose crop maximized garden output when every bit of food mattered. Red beets were valued for their incredible storage capacity. Families would grow large quantities in summer, harvest them in fall, and store them in root cellars where they would keep for months. Some varieties, like Detroit Dark Red and Early Wonder, were particularly popular. What made beets nutritionally special was their unique profile. The roots are rich in folate, manganese, potassium, and natural nitrates that support heart health. The greens are even more nutritious, packed with vitamins A, C, and K, plus calcium and iron. During the Depression, beets were prepared in countless ways. The roots would be boiled, pickled, roasted, or grated raw into salads. The greens would be cooked like spinach, often with a bit of vinegar to balance their earthy flavor. Pickled beets were especially popular because they could be preserved without refrigeration, providing color and nutrition to winter meals. Some families even made beet wine or used beet juice as a natural food coloring for other dishes. Turnips. Turnips were a Depression-era essential that has largely disappeared from modern gardens. These fast-growing root vegetables were valued for their adaptability, nutrition, and dual-purpose nature. Like beets, turnips provide two vegetables in one: crisp, vitamin-rich roots and nutritious greens similar to mustard greens in flavor. What made turnips especially valuable during the 1930s was their quick growth cycle, from seed to harvest in just 45 to 60 days. Nutritionally, turnip roots are high in vitamin C, fiber, and potassium, while the greens are packed with vitamins A, C, and K, plus calcium and folate. Varieties like Purple Top White Globe were Depression-era favorites that are still available today. Turnips played a crucial role in crop rotation systems. They could be planted after early summer crops were harvested, making use of garden space that would otherwise lie fallow. Their quick growth meant families could get another harvest before winter. Additionally, turnips were often used as animal feed during the Depression, the roots providing energy and the greens providing protein for chickens, rabbits, and other livestock that in turn provided eggs, meat, and milk for the family. Collard greens. In the South especially, collard greens were a Depression-era staple that provided essential nutrition when little else was available. These large-leaved greens could withstand both the heat of summer and the chill of winter, making them one of the most dependable garden vegetables. What made collards particularly valuable was their incredible productivity and hardiness. Unlike many greens that bolt in hot weather, collards remain productive throughout summer. They also become sweeter after frost, extending the harvest season well into winter. Nutritionally, collards contain more calcium per serving than milk, making them crucial for bone health when dairy might be scarce. They're also rich in vitamins A, C, and K, plus iron and fiber. Depression-era families would typically cook collards with a bit of salt pork or bacon for flavor. The tradition of eating collards on New Year's Day for good luck and prosperity began during these hard times. The large, flat leaves were said to symbolize folded money, and eating them was thought to bring financial fortune in the coming year. This tradition continues in many southern homes today. Collards were also one of the few vegetables that could be grown year-round in warmer climates, providing a consistent source of nutrition regardless of season. Jerusalem artichokes. Jerusalem artichokes, also called sunchokes, are the tuberous roots of a native North American sunflower, not actually artichokes at all. These knobby potato-like tubers were especially valuable during the 1930s because they required almost no care once established. Nutritionally, Jerusalem artichokes store their carbohydrates as inulin rather than starch, making them suitable for people watching their blood sugar. They're rich in iron, potassium, and thiamine, plus they contain prebiotic fiber that supports gut health. During the Depression, families would harvest the tubers in fall and winter, cooking them like potatoes, roasted, boiled, or added to soups and stews. They have a slightly sweet, nutty flavor that was described as a cross between potatoes and water chestnuts. What made Jerusalem artichokes particularly valuable was their perennial nature. Once planted, they would return year after year with no additional work. In fact, they were sometimes considered too prolific, as they can spread aggressively if not contained. Native Americans had been cultivating them long before European settlement, teaching early colonists about this reliable food source. During the Depression, their ability to thrive in poor soil with minimal care made them a valuable insurance crop when other vegetables might fail. Swiss chard. Swiss chard was a Depression-era garden staple that offered remarkable nutrition and productivity from minimal space. This leafy green with colorful stems could be harvested continuously throughout the growing season, providing fresh vegetables for months from a single planting. What made chard especially valuable was its heat tolerance and longevity. While spinach would quickly bolt in summer heat, chard would continue producing from spring through fall, and even into winter in milder climates. Nutritionally, chard is exceptional. It's loaded with vitamins A, C, and K, plus magnesium, potassium, iron, and fiber. The different colored varieties contain various antioxidants, making them as nutritious as they are beautiful. Depression-era cooks would use young chard leaves in salads, while mature leaves would be steamed, sautéed, or added to soups. Swiss chard was often grown along the edges of gardens or in small spaces where other vegetables wouldn't fit. Its colorful stems, red, yellow, orange, pink, and white, added beauty to utilitarian gardens. The 5-color silver beet variety, which produces stems of different colors on the same plant, was particularly popular. During the Depression, chard's ability to regrow after harvesting made it an economical choice. Families could cut the outer leaves repeatedly while the center continued producing new growth for months. Parsnips. Parsnips were a crucial winter vegetable during the Depression, valued for their sweet flavor, calorie density, and incredible storage capabilities. These carrot-like root vegetables actually improve in flavor after exposure to cold, making them perfect for fall planting and winter harvesting. What made parsnips especially important was their ability to remain in the ground through winter in many regions. Families would leave them unharvested until needed, using the soil as natural refrigeration. This provided fresh vegetables during months when little else was available. Nutritionally, parsnips are energy-dense, containing more calories per serving than most vegetables, important during times when food might be scarce. They're rich in fiber, vitamin C, folate, and potassium. Their natural sweetness, which intensifies after frost, made them a treat when sugar was rationed or expensive. Parsnips were often used as a sweetener in cakes and other baked goods during the Depression, when sugar was expensive or rationed. They were also fermented to make wine or beer in some regions. The hollow crown variety, introduced in the 1850s, was a particular favorite for its reliable production and excellent flavor. Parsnips were sometimes called poor man's fruit because of their natural sweetness, especially after exposure to cold temperatures. Mustard greens. Mustard greens were a Depression-era favorite because they grew quickly and provided vital nutrition during the hungry gap of early spring when winter stores were depleted, but summer crops weren't yet producing. What made mustard greens particularly valuable was their rapid growth, from seed to harvest in just 35 to 45 days. Nutritionally, they contain more vitamin K than any other vegetable, plus significant amounts of vitamins A and C, calcium, and fiber. During the Depression, mustard greens were often cooked with a bit of fatback or salt pork for flavor, though they could also be eaten raw in salads when young and tender. The seeds could even be ground to make prepared mustard, ensuring nothing went to waste. Mustard was often planted as a dual-purpose crop for the nutritious greens and for the seeds that could be used as a spice or ground into prepared mustard. Varieties like Southern Giant Curled and Florida Broadleaf were popular during the Depression. Mustard greens were also used as a cover crop to prevent soil erosion and add organic matter when turned under. Their spicy flavor was believed to help ward off colds and respiratory ailments, making them a valued medicinal food during times when doctor visits were unaffordable. Okra. Okra was a Depression-era staple, especially in the South, where it thrived in hot, dry conditions that would wilt many other vegetables. What made okra particularly valuable was its ability to produce abundantly even during drought and extreme heat. Nutritionally, okra is high in vitamins A, C, and K, plus folate and fiber. The mucilaginous quality that gives okra its characteristic slime also made it useful as a natural thickener for soups and stews, stretching meals when ingredients were limited. During the Depression, the tender young pods would be fried, stewed, or pickled. Even the leaves could be cooked like spinach, and the seeds could be roasted and ground as a coffee substitute when real coffee was too expensive. Okra came to America with enslaved Africans and became an important crop in southern gardens. The Clemson spineless variety, developed in 1939 just as the Depression was ending, became popular because it lacked the prickly spines found on earlier varieties. Okra was often dried for winter use. The sliced pods would be strung on thread and hung to dry, then reconstituted in soups and stews. The beautiful hibiscus-like flowers made okra a dual-purpose plant, both ornamental and edible, in Depression-era gardens. Cabbage. Cabbage was one of the most important vegetables during the Depression, valued for its incredible storage capabilities and versatility. Varieties like Early Jersey Wakefield and Danish Ballhead could be stored in root cellars for months without refrigeration. Nutritionally, cabbage is high in vitamin C, crucial during winter months when fresh fruits were unavailable. It also contains significant amounts of vitamin K, fiber, and cancer-fighting compounds. During times when fresh produce was scarce, cabbage provided essential nutrients that helped prevent deficiencies. Depression-era families would eat cabbage fresh in slaws and salads, cooked in soups and stews, or preserved through fermentation as sauerkraut. This fermentation process not only preserved the cabbage, but actually increased its nutritional value. Cabbage was often one of the first vegetables planted in spring and again in late summer for fall harvest. It could be grown in most climates and required relatively little care. During the Depression, cabbage heads were often split and shared among neighbors. A single large head could be too much for one family to use before it spoiled. Fermented cabbage in the form of sauerkraut provided vital probiotics and vitamin C throughout winter, helping prevent scurvy and other deficiency diseases. Some families would bury whole cabbage heads in the ground, root end down, as a form of natural refrigeration. Winter squash. Winter squash varieties were Depression-era lifesavers, providing dense nutrition and calories when food was scarce. Unlike summer squash, these hard-shelled varieties could be stored for months without refrigeration, making them crucial for winter food security. Varieties like Blue Hubbard, Boston Marrow, and Butternut were prized for their sweet flesh and exceptional storage qualities. A single large Hubbard squash could weigh 15 to 20 pounds and provide multiple meals for a family. Nutritionally, winter squash are rich in vitamins A and C, fiber, and antioxidants. Their dense, calorie-rich flesh provided much-needed energy during times when food might be limited. Even the seeds were valuable. Roasted, they provided protein, healthy fats, and minerals. During the Depression, families would grow several types of winter squash, harvesting them in fall before frost and curing them for storage. The hard shells of larger varieties like Hubbard were so tough they could be stored for 6 months or more without refrigeration. Some families would cut notches in the stem to identify when each squash was harvested, using the oldest ones first. Winter squash was incredibly versatile in Depression-era kitchens. It could be baked, steamed, or boiled. It was used in pies, breads, and puddings when sugar was available, or simply mashed with a bit of salt and pepper. The seeds were carefully saved, some for planting the next year's crop, the rest for roasting as a nutritious snack. Even the hard shells of larger varieties could be dried and used as containers, dippers, or scoops. Amaranth. Amaranth was grown in many Depression-era gardens, especially among immigrant communities and in the Southwest. This ancient crop provided both nutritious greens and protein-rich seeds from the same plant. What made amaranth particularly valuable was its incredible resilience. It would grow in poor soil, withstand drought, and produce abundantly with minimal care. It was also self-seeding, meaning once established, it would return year after year. Nutritionally, amaranth leaves are richer in iron than spinach and contain high levels of vitamins A and C, calcium, and protein. The seeds contain a complete protein with all essential amino acids, rare for a plant source. This made amaranth especially valuable during times when meat might be unaffordable. Amaranth has been cultivated for thousands of years in the Americas and was a staple food of the Aztecs and other indigenous peoples. During the Depression, immigrant families from Mexico and Central America continued this tradition, introducing it to their neighbors. The young leaves would be harvested continuously throughout the summer, while the mature plants would be allowed to produce their distinctive, colorful flower heads, which would eventually yield thousands of tiny, protein-rich seeds. These seeds could be ground into flour, popped like miniature popcorn, or cooked into a porridge. In Mexico, amaranth seeds mixed with honey or molasses were formed into a treat called alegría, happiness, a fitting name for a food that provided such valuable nutrition during difficult times. The plants were also strikingly beautiful, with some varieties reaching 6 to 8 feet tall, with vibrant purple, red, or gold foliage, and flowers, adding beauty to utilitarian gardens. These 15 nutrient-dense vegetables from the 1930s weren't just food. They were survival tools that helped a generation weather tough economic times. Today, as we face rising food costs and concerns about nutrition, these vegetables deserve a second look. They're not just historical curiosities, they're practical solutions for modern challenges. By adding even a few of these forgotten vegetables to your garden, you'll be growing food that's more nutritious, more resilient, and more self-sufficient. You'll be connecting with the wisdom of previous generations who knew how to feed their families well, even in difficult times. Which of these Depression-era vegetables will you try growing? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more gardening wisdom that's perfectly suited for today's challenges. Until next time, happy gardening.